If you're a public servant, I'm sure there are many stories you wish you could tell. Denise Fletcher spent 20 years working in Parliament House, and after that, she decided to write a political thriller called Unspoken. Denise, good morning, welcome.
Thank you, Saskia. It's great to be with you.
No, it is important to note on the outset that this is a fiction book. But
that is exactly right.
But it's hard for me to believe that a large portion of it wasn't inspired by your career. I mean, it has to be based in some truth, doesn't it?
That's absolutely right. Like, it's a really difficult balancing act writing contemporary political fiction, especially when you've been immersed in it for so long. You need to keep the reader glued to the page. You need to keep them turning the page. You need to be a story that's believable, but not too close to the truth. And it is a very tricky balancing act, but it's a fun one to navigate, I must say.
There's a character in the book, and I don't want to give away any plot lines or any spoilers, but there's a character in the book who is a politician. He's got a fair amount of power. He's actually representing the seat of Farrer, which I thought was funny. It's almost like you knew that was going to be big in the news.
Yes.
And he is controlled. He's like a puppet. He's controlled somewhat against his will by very corrupt people.
Yes.
Tell me about where the inspiration for this character came from.
It's really interesting. I dropped into a friend the other day and dropped off a copy of Unspoken, and sitting on her table was another book, and it was David Gillespie's book called Toxic at Work, and his book's about surviving psychopaths within your workplace. And I picked it up because it was just sitting there, and I flipped through, and I had to laugh because I recognised immediately some of the character traits that David Gillespie was exposing. And as the two books lay side by side, I thought, well, they're really tackling the same themes, and that is workplaces that are built around winning rather than well-being. Character, Christian Fong, he starts off, with the ideals of doing the right thing, but over time the system, wears him down, and he gets deeper and deeper into the murky waters of corruption without really knowing how he got there. And he reaches the point where obviously he's past the point of no return. Because one of the themes of the novel is the infiltration of organised crime into our systems, and that's where Christian Fong's story takes him.
And is that all fiction, that element of the book?
I started writing this book over a fair bit of time, or doing the research over a fair bit of time. And in 2017, I was sitting at my desk. I was working for the President of the Senate, Stephen Parry, at the time, and an email popped in. And it was the first National Wastewater Drug Monitoring Program. And I was looking for a story, because it's all right to say one thing, that you're going to write a political crime fiction, but unless you've got a really intriguing story sitting at the front of that, it's, you've really got nothing at all. And I was searching for that story, and so this came out, and all of a sudden I saw a rather unique storyline unfolding, before my eyes, and that was the infiltration of organised crime into our political systems.
My guest is Denise Fletcher. Her book is Unspoken. It's a political thriller. It's a good read, and I think it will be a really fascinating read to anyone who's worked in this space in Canberra, or anyone who's been curious about what goes on behind the scenes, or what could in a fictional world go on behind the scenes. Mike on the text line says, I wonder how many politicians or their staff have bought the book to see if they can recognise themselves. I don't know, Denise, have people told you that they've seen parallels to themselves in your book?
There's two really funny things about that. So in my last week up in Canberra, I was saying goodbye to people, and they say, what are you going to do now? And I said, I'm writing a political crime thriller. And some of the politicians, who I knew well, would just look at me and say, am I in it? And by this stage, I'd had an answer already scripted, with tongue in cheek, saying, well, shame on you if you think you are. But I've had these books circulating, and so I'm already getting just fabulous reader feedback from, and I know some copies are in Canberra, have landed in Canberra. And so they're, absolutely loving, the glimpse behind the political curtain, of course. But the good thing is whether you're really into politics, it's your thing, or you've got no interest in it at all, people seem to be loving reading Unspoken, and I think that's because of the world in which it sits. So the political world is the background, but I've really tried to write really engaging characters that sit in front, so that if you're not into politics, you sort of forget about that background and you're engaged by the characters. But if you are into politics, that background comes forward because it's really familiar to you, and you're nodding and you're thinking, yeah, you know, that's my life.
That's my life. Well, I really hope not all of it is true, because Frances Maguire, who is the hero of the story, she's a staffer and she has a bit of a terrible time at work. It sounds incredibly stressful, incredibly high pressure, and she's sort of on one of the lower rungs of the ladder in this complicated, ego-filled workplace. Tell me about her character. Is she you, Denise?
You know, Frances Maguire is loyal. She's competent. You know, she's discreet. You know, she works really well under pressure. And you know, like most political staffers, we learn very quickly to absorb that pressure, you know, and accept behaviour. And this is the Jenkins review, you know, brought this out, is that, you know, they interviewed, you know, many people who work in this environment, and 80% of them said they accept behaviours in Parliament House that they would accept in no other workplace. And that's quite remarkable, isn't it? And it just goes to show two things, you know, the uniqueness of the workplace, but also how far we need to go to protect the well-being of people. With Frances, like she embodies so many people working behind the scenes who are back office, whose skill set, who's really traits of competence and loyalty and things like that make them good at their job, but they also make them incredibly vulnerable to people who want to exploit those traits and in a power mismatch. And that's the most important thing, because that's what Unspoken explores. It explores a power mismatch within the political scene, and also within, I mean, I have my second main character is Maxie Collins, and we see that same power imbalance within organised crime and outlaw motorcycle gangs. And so that's where, you know, the circle comes with the novel, is circling around those themes.
Yeah, it's got all the ingredients for a really thrilling read. Did you come back to Canberra to help inspire your writing, or did you find that that was triggering?
The first part of the novel is a full immersion into Parliament House and Canberra, and I know that people you know, are loving seeing that. As you say, very few people, and I tell this when I took new staff up there, that very few people get the access that we get, you know, behind the closed doors with the security pass, and it is an absolute privilege. But people are really fascinated to be able to, you know, if you lift that veil a little bit and let them in. And so in the first bit of the book, I just tried to make sure that it was a real immersion into the argy-bargy and the chaos and the theatre. And that's why I chose the final sitting week before a federal election, is because, you know, the chaos of that week, if you've been in it, you know it, because, you know, the government's trying to, you know, to get one up on the opposition and vice versa, and, you know, all the crossbenchers are trying to, you know, find their place in that all. And you know, again, the feedback everyone's saying is that I just love that glimpse. But that's only about the third of the book, and then it loops around Australia, you know, as it does for an election campaign, but it's actually set down the southwest of WA, which is where, as you say, Frances Maguire, who's blamed of something she didn't do, but is publicly shamed and all over the press, and she escapes the limelight and ends down in the southwest of WA.
What an adventure. It's a great read, Denise. Congratulations on the book, and thanks so much for your time this morning.
Beautiful. Thanks, Saskia.
Denise Fletcher's book is called Unspoken. If you've had anything to do with politics in this city, you'll love it. If you like crime as a genre in general, I think you'll also love it.